Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Overtime. Today, I'm joined by Bettina Hobson, and she is one of the leading industry experts in supply chain sustainability and inclusion efforts within business. Now, Bettina has educated me on so much lately. If you're not following her on LinkedIn, I advise you make that connection as soon as possible. I'm very excited to have her on today so we could talk about a lot of challenging topics that I'm seeing within our industry, and using her expertise is going to be just so impactful for helping you all unpack and unravel the challenges and meanings of sustainability and supply chain. So without much further ado, Bettina, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's just wonderful to always be able to connect with LinkedIn friends and make them friends to be able to talk about a topic I'm so passionate about, which is supply chain and the various different impacts that it has on sustainability, how it can be interweaved in business, and bringing about new paradigms. So with my various different experiences from CPG to fashion to automotive and continuous improvements, I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Definitely. Well, let's hit it off right at the beginning here. As you know, this is a very hard thing to define. We look at this as, when I look at what you've shared with me and educated me on, I see that there's a hard time with people. Everyone pitches this ideology of sustainable, carbon neutral, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I feel like from what I've learned from you, it's so much more. So I think to start it off, I think let's take an episode and really just share with people what do you see is the definition of supply chain and sustainability and kind of how those two interlink.
Wow, great question, and not so simple to answer. Well, 2020, as most of us experienced, was a very challenging time, but it also gave us a lot of mantras. One of them is build back better, right? So with that being said, this is now considered the decade of action. Last year launched something where we would see sustainable development goals from the United Nations kind of be the platform or base that sustainability would be largely defined and try to implement into new business models or retrofit those that are existing. So sustainability for me, I don't always subscribe to the textbook definition where we talk about facts and figures, which those are important. I think sustainability is being able to change behaviors, hearts and minds to be able to make a better world, working environment, conditions, and that combined with the supply chain environments where we kind of look at being able to evaluate an environment from design to decommission or reuse is how the two are running, terms are kind of running parallel, but they do intersect in many different ways. So being able to understand what something is green, what that actually means. Does that mean that what's existing is packaging is better? Does it mean that there's better wages paid to those working in the value chain? What does that mean? And that usually happens when we have a value stream mapping or some sort of audit internally, and we look at ourselves and maybe look at benchmarks as well to see what types of things help a product get from a raw material and sourcing, responsible procurement, all the way to an end customer, maybe a reverse logistics situation, and hopefully avoiding landfill and finding a good use for that product once it's no longer desired for the particular party that is purchased, produced, etc. So there's lots to unpack there. So I would say that it's one of those things it does vary a lot from person to person. But I think the fact that if we are all kind of moving toward something to where we think we're making things better by being responsible and thinking about what am I making this for? Am I overproducing? Am I making this based on a demand? Am I filling the need? Am I polluting my backyard, but I'm on social media saying, hey, this is great, and look what I'm doing, in a greenwashing type of effort. So being able to...
Influencer topic,
sure.
Hey, I'm doing this, but in the background, it's, yeah.
Right. So making sure that it's quantifiable and measurable. And I know there's some cliche sayings, if it's not measured, it can't be... I'm not sure how that goes, but if it can't be measured, then it's not a viable data point. So just being able to quantify what impacts we want to mitigate, what risk we want to lessen, and being able to do that in a way that is equitable and is fair for not just stakeholders at the very top, but across different customer bases, across different stratospheres as far as within a company, and even in the community in which a product or service is delivered.
That's really interesting that you say all that, because like when I hear you educate on this, it makes me wonder, in kind of looking at these different topics and models, that are people, especially like chief supply chain officers at any size industry, are they looking at this as the definition of sustainability and trying to go lockstep with this sustainability? Because what you said is very interesting. There's many different steps to this. There's many different, mechanisms within what is sustainability. Do you think people get stuck on that whole big message and kind of not what the actual definition is, that it's an evolving process? It's kind of, we'll call it sustainable humility.
Sure. So that's a good question. So the issue is a couple. It is multi-pronged approach that needs to happen. One, where is a company in their sustainability efforts? For example, I think we may have talked about it. I know I've had a conversation recently. There's some automakers are going electric. A lot of them are. Now, some are not. And so which one is the right path to go? So is that chief sustainability officer of the company that is not moving toward electric? Does that mean that their company is not sustainable? And if they plan to join the party, but at a later point, what are they communicating to their customer base? So there's that communication piece. And then there's auditing where you are in the market versus where others are of your peers and competitors. And so I think that's the conversation that has to be had internally in boards and other places. Now, funny that you mentioned is that chief sustainable officer thinking about these types of things. What is that chief sustainable officer? What is their thought process? And how is their approach to sustainability impacted by their personal life situation? And so then we also have to add in some things that we'll probably talk about at a later time. But what about the diversity of that team? And are they able to understand a life experience that may not have allowed for sustainability to be number one because survival was the important part? Or maybe they needed to focus more on profits because shareholder commitments were of a certain level. So maybe they wanted to go with a diverse supplier or a more sustainable supplier, but they couldn't do so because the votes were, we need to focus on cost only. And when you're focusing on cost, it's hard to think about other metrics. So it's a difficult question, and it really will vary from company to company, and it doesn't even matter what size it is. A startup may have a certain decision to raise capital versus an established brand that just may have certain shareholder participation that doesn't allow for that flexibility. And we know that customers are asking for it, but they may not know the intricacies of the production, or that the tier 2 or 3 supplier is the one who maybe is is the offender as far as the unsustainable practices.
Yep. And that's that's a good thing I'd like to kind of round this episode out with is you speak about the customer. In your mind and what you've seen in all of your experiences and helping and consulting with people in that, do you think that customers are more driving the meaning of sustainability to a company or the own mechanisms within a company?
I think that, to be a little bit spicy here, to take a phrase from a friend, I think that customers are saying that they want sustainability, but they don't want to pay extra for it. So that the brand needs to make sure that they're finding a way to incorporate that into their business practices. And so there's also the fact that the brand needs to take on that ownership as well. So it's a twofold approach, but this is kind of what leads to greenwashing, because a brand will maybe exploit a little bit more of what they're doing and make it seem more impactful than it really is. So as the consumers become more educated and we become just not consumers of a product, but really start to become a partner with the brand and say, okay, I'm following this brand. I'm buying this product from them because I know that they are committed to sustainable practices, and they're not just saying that or putting things on social media, but they're actually engaging, and these are the things that they're doing. They have a sustainability scorecard posted on their website. It's not just about next day shipping or budget prices, but they actually are showing what happens with dyes, what happens to water, what are they doing in the community to uplift the community that may work in the lowest part of their value chain. So I think as we have more of those happen, brands will be inclined to do so. But I've also seen brands, and I won't mention one, but I saw a very global brand say, we haven't had customers ask us for this. And so sometimes that's not really that shocking. I think it's a matter of they're trying to fill a need and still say what they think is profitable versus what the consumer point of view is.
Yeah.
So it's tough. And then the thing is, too, how do you say that something is the consumer didn't ask for it? Did you have a focus group and host them to see if a group of your consumers or a cross-section of your consumers are looking for this? What types of things did you do to look and see who your customer base is? And so that voice of the customer and having a pulse on the industry can't be a one-sided conversation where something is being pushed out. It just has, we're no longer in the age of Mad Men in the 1950s or 60s, I think it was, where we kind of create this ad campaign and go, here, take it. Yeah. So it has to be a real conversation, and people can tell when you care and when you don't.
Oh, most definitely. It's all about authenticity. I mean, as you know, that authenticity in supply chain and sustainability is extremely important to kind of keep that mechanism together. I guess I have one more question on today's show for you. Sure. And kind of, if you could take it away right now, what would be the one thing that you think supply chain officers and sustainability officers, chief executive officers, the whole C-suite, if you could give them one message about understanding sustainability, what would that be?
Emotional intelligence.
I love it. I
think if they, we kind of were talking about this in the last question, but I think that having that EQ is something that can't be taught. And I think that there's been traditionally in business just the race to have year-over-year growth. If you have a plant in nature, unless we're in Jack and the Beanstalk fantasy, you can't have something continuously growing. There has to be some sort of way to measure besides just year-over-year growth and and understand how to be able to be in a market where gross domestic product isn't the only success story to be told.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Well, Bettina, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. It has been an absolute pleasure to learn and connect with you, and I hope you have you on some future episodes with me to have further discussions on this. So, as we close out, anything that any new series or presentations you'll be doing out there, or anything you want to give a shout out to right now?
I recently just did climate reality mentoring where I had 20 students and we talked about the impacts of climate change and what climate mitigation strategies will happen. So definitely the students that I just had, the mentees that I have, I definitely hope that they're watching and hope that we can work together on some more supply chain impacts to make our planet a better place so that we can have businesses that thrive.
No worries. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I wanted to kind of touch base with one last thing, saying to all of our members and watchers and viewers out there, I will put the information to follow Bettina and everything that she has got working on. And thank you all for coming